Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all. And yes, lots of interesting questions. So fantastic, and that's all valuable stuff for us because this process is a feedback process. Okay, so we've got a concept, we've got sketch designs, and this is based on working with the people, the group that we have at the moment. But you need to put out enough for people to be able to respond to, and that's where we're at the moment. So now we're trying to gather all that together and see what the next steps are. Okay. So what I'm going to do is briefly talk about why we have the building that we've got. And I know a lot of you are asking the questions, why is it round? So we'll get onto that. But what I'd like you to do is just put aside round versus square. That's not an issue, okay? It's the building needs, the design needs, in order to be clever, and sort of be something that's good for now, good for 50 years' time, and good for 100 years' time, future-proofing, it has to be whatever the best thing is. Okay, and obviously there's some subjective issues in that, but generally we'd like to sort of help communicate that point to you guys. First thing is, given the site that we've got, this design at the moment is only in the fenced area. Okay, so the conversation to the wider connectivity of all that is ongoing, and obviously some of your comments are going to help foster sort of a good dialogue with that, with decorum. So in regards to access, in regards to where the car parks stop or start, where the servicing is, all those sorts of things are trying to get everything in the pot so that we can work out what the best solution is. Okay. So the second thing is in terms of a brief, okay, there's two briefs. One is a functional brief, as in what's required. Connected to that is how much is it going to cost and how's it going to work, okay? That's a physical thing. The main thing, though, is there needs to be a social brief, because why are we doing this? It's a social centre, it's a community centre. And what we're trying to do is make something that celebrates Tring, celebrates the best of Tring, now, 50 years' time, and in 100 years' time. So we're leaving a legacy to people for 100 years' time. They'll say, this is how they did things, this is what they did, and this is what they gave us. And that's an important thing. When we build into the fact that, into this project, the fact that we've got climate change, we've got oil prices, we've got all sorts of things, it's not going to get better, it's getting worse. So what we have to do is we have to find a way of making the building future-proofed in terms of its operational energy requirements, fundamental. And if you can make a building that almost doesn't require any energy from the grid, that's a great legacy to leave people, because it means that they can operate the building without being burdened with other sorts of costs and the risk of things closing down. So, secondly, social and community. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to be something for everybody. Symbolically, okay, circles are, there's no corners. So there's no inside, there's no outside. It's just a sort of a corral sort of thing for people to come in from all directions. Okay, so that's just a symbolic thing. And many cultures throughout the world, obviously, when they do community things, it's a round thing. Secondly, from a practical point of view, one level. Okay, I know a lot of you have been asking, why is it on two levels? And we have to ask the question, why would it be on two levels? What's the benefit of two levels? So the downside of the two levels, I mean, you'd have a more compact construction, possibly. You're using the same foundations to do two floors. But you have to realize that you're giving up a lot of net internal space. Because in order to get access for everybody to the second floor, you need to have circulation space, you might need to have toilets, and you certainly need to have a lift and staircases. So you're taking the net area that could be used for the budget that we may be able to have to put into that, which is not something that's going to contribute to the functioning on the programs that you're going to be running. And then the third thing is, if we're going to do something like this, this is at the heart of Tring Town, and it needs to be something that we're all proud of, celebrates the best of Tring. And that means, is it possible to build with our local craftsmen? Is it possible to build with local materials? And is it possible to have something that shows how you can run a building with very, very little cost? And then if that's all possible and it looks great and everyone's proud of it and it works very well, it's the sort of thing that other people in other towns elsewhere might say, that's a good idea, maybe we could have one of those. Let's learn from that. So I think there's something there in terms of the legacy of that. So the site that you've obviously all very familiar with, we know that there are issues with driving down, the access there. We know there's issues with the slope of the site. We know there's issues with the parking. We know that we've got parking there. That's the town. This side of the town has restaurants, bars, the connectivity, parking, all those sorts of things. And we know that we have various routes that flow through. So what we're trying to do, it's a good position to be in, this location. And what we're trying to do is find out how does this thing respond best to all of these things. So the answers are not 100% fixed yet. We don't know yet, okay? But what we know about some of these things here is that the building will have to adjust a little bit in terms of the level to make sure that we can get a balance between that car park, and you are going to have some access down the back here for emergency vehicles or servicing or something like that, and possibly direct access for disabled parking right next to the back door. So we need to find a balance, and we need to find a balance that makes sure that the ramps and the access to the building are as minimal as possible. And they're competing, because there's a huge difference between that level and that level. And so where's the right place? Okay, so just in terms of a piece of architecture in the landscape here. At the moment, the park is it's more a thoroughfare. I know kids play there, and you've got the park there. But is there something that can be a catalyst to make the park work a bit better? Okay, and we can see that. I mean, our remit hasn't been to look at the wider landscaping, but it would be nice to be able to make sure that there's not the sort of boundary. You see, we've just been talking about that, the need for a fence and security. So that is something that we do need to take care of. We don't fully have the answer yet. We need to hear from you guys. But it would be great to be able to have a building that is inclusive, so it hasn't put up a boundary and a fence, but at the same time safe, and at the same time is something that the people are going to look after. It's not going to be destroyed. I'm looking at the graffiti on that corner there as a little indication of what we're trying to avoid. So these are some of the things that we need to sort of juggle and make work. And then you can see that with very simple things, simple shapes and simple geometries, even just using some landscaping or plants, you can get quite a powerful impact. So you can get some identity for minimal cost by doing some of these things. And at the same time, we need to make sure that although we've got a functional brief and a program brief, it does need to be a piece of architecture, okay? Because architecture is a powerful thing. It's the thing that binds people. It's like a story, it's like a book, it's like a film. And it needs to be something that reflects everyone, the way our town is. And we need to do that, if possible, without spending too much money. So our concept really, being in the park, is the garden wall. And in England, it's one of those things that we are really good at. It's fabulous to go around all the old country houses, or even just local houses, or whatever, just going along the lanes, and you'll see these amazing walls. And in my opinion, I think we should be starting to list some of those walls, because no one would ever build that kind of thing anymore. And they're just absolutely fantastic. And when they weather in, and you get plants, and you get life, and you get all sorts of things growing in them, they're a delight. The thing about a garden wall and a courtyard garden is there's this element of surprise. You come in, and you think, oh, that's a bit, sort of, might be a bit severe. You go through a narrow doorway, and suddenly you go, oh my gosh, this is incredible, okay? So there's this in that wall there. I mean, there's no entry to that wall there, but that's the kind of thing that we're trying to build into the facade, so that it's from human level down here, not from eye level, looking down, and all the drawings that we're showing you. It feels like it's just this garden wall that's curving, and you can walk around it, and it's full of life, just like these walls are. In regards to connectivity and things, I'm not going to go too much into this at the moment, but obviously you're all local, you're all aware about how the whole thing works here. But is basically there are various routes. There are primary routes, there are secondary routes, there are nodes, so where someone will hang around or do something because there's something going on, playground for instance, and we need to analyze those, map all those things out so that we can find the best position for what we've got, so that the opportunity that we've got here can be something that is a catalyst for wider afield. It's not just something that's just on its site and doesn't really pay any attention to the further afield. So at the moment, this whole has a facade on this side. That side's not really a public facade, although that's the access side. It's great that we've got lots of light, but in terms of its public identity, this is it. That's the facade. That's your shop window. So by doing a curved circle that goes like that, further, it's probably, the front of the building would probably be between halfway between here and the fence. So it's much more in the park, and you would walk around it like this as you pass through the park. And so the public facade or shop window of this space now is far more exposed, and hopefully that's something that would encourage people to use it. It would have its own identity. In regards to circulation, I'm not going to dwell on this so much, but I don't know if you can see that, but just to clarify from the last consultation in terms of access for partially abled people or pushchairs and those sorts of things, there was concern about, the levels. But actually, you can see that, in fact, I'm going to go up here. The key nodes are here on the corner there of the park, unless the parking changes, but at the moment that's where it is. And then the other key node is there because it's the place where you get the connectivity. The front of the building is obviously facing front like that, so it's facing this orientated way. But it's probably not going to be the route that most people access the front door through, because you would be coming from there or you're coming from there. So you would gradually climb up the ramped area, which is going to go either side. And this is a gentle ramp that gets you to the front door and back down. So in regards to the steepness of that and the accessibility of that, it's a balance between that level, and where's the best place to put the floor level. At the moment, the balance is, for us, the floor level that we've got designed is slightly higher than this. And the reason for that is to try and reduce the slopes there, to make sure that we can still have access, but also we want to make sure that although we're excavating a bigger area than the footprint here, we need to have a balanced cut and fill. And that means basically whatever you're cutting away from the ground, you need to be able to put back on the same site. What we don't want to do is have lots of lorries going away with all sorts of muck. And just to give you a heads up, I mean, this is the sort of brief that we're given. So the second column on the right is the formal brief that was given us. And through analysis and our programming and planning, we had to adjust that a little bit because we have to take care of things like fire regs, circulation, toilet spaces. There are codes for those sorts of things, and we have to fit into those. And so the building gets a little bit bigger. So the original request was for 273 square meters. And what we've had to do is, in order to get that to work according to codes, is up to 824 square meters. So we talked about that before. Just basic community is we're all together. There's no hierarchy in terms of its formal position. So we'll come on to this now. I know this is a bit more difficult to grasp, but and I know there's engineers in the audience here. Maybe you can explain the maths to some other people as well to help them. But basically, given that the brief is to make a low carbon building, okay, in terms of the amount of carbon that's used to construct the building, but also in terms of the carbon used to run the building for the next, say, 100 years, okay, we need to minimize that. And we also need to minimize the cost of doing that. Is it possible to do all of that at the same time as having a building that celebrates and is something that we can get excited about? And that's the balance we have to have. So if we take an area, let's just say it's this area that we have here. Let's just say we have 100 square feet and we have to make a building, okay? And we're going to make that building round. So that's 100% of the area. Now, if we make it square, the external surface area of the same floor area is now 13% more. Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, but if we make it rectangular, which most buildings are, this building is, lots of buildings are rectangular. Everyone feels they want a rectangular building because they can have views both sides, easy access both sides, lights, all those sorts of things. We've gone up to 69% more. So if we just look at that as an economic issue, and there's going to be a limit on the amount of money that can be raised, the budget and what's being paid for, wouldn't it be better to put that 69% into something else that's useful for the community inside the building? Okay, secondly, it's, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I can see the advantages of a round building
Yeah.
from the external
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
But for storage and
Yeah.
space usage
Yeah.
within, it limits it.
I'll answer your question in a minute, if you don't mind, in a couple of slides. Secondly, it's about the construction, okay, in terms of not just the cost of the wall, but how much carbon has gone into the building to make the building. And if it could be 69% less, that's a good thing. And thirdly, the last one is through the external fabric of the building, that's where you get your heat loss. You all know about that. I mean, this building's appalling, I'm afraid. And I don't know what the running cost of it is, but and you know, some of our houses might be like that, very leaky and costs a fortune. So if our energy bills in our average homes have gone up to 3,000, 4,000, okay, that's an awful lot. Now, some of you may not know about them, but there's a thing called passive house. We build houses that are called passive house, and they are high standards of energy efficiency. If I build a 3-bedroom passive house down the road, your energy bills would be about £300 or £400. Okay, and that's a good thing, right? So we want this building to reflect that type of thing as well. So the surface area of the building is something that's going to emit or lose your heat. And that means that if we can reduce that by 69%, that is a good thing as well. So we'll come back onto the question in a minute in terms of storage. So the layout at the moment is the hall 2, which is, actually I should stand up here. Hall 2 here, okay, for the brief, was to take these seats and to make a cinema, so there could be a film club for those seats. And I think there's 80 seats. There's about 75, 80 seats, I think. Approximately, yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Phil. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So those seats fold out and you get regged seating, which is great, and they've just been bought. So that's, we want to make use of those. So they're stored in here. When they're stored away, this hall functions as any other hall like this in the usual way, and whatever multifunctions that we can have that go along with that. Now this hall doesn't have any light, okay, specifically because those are the kinds of functions you might want to run in those spaces, right? There's hall 1 here, which is bigger. That's twice the size, and that's a more flexible hall, higher, because you can get more things going on. This is not a hall for sports. There's sports places around that can do that. Okay, so, and the trouble is when you go to sports like badminton and stuff like that, they have very specific requirements for the volumes and the heights and the distances, and then you're going to have to pay for that, which we don't actually need. But it's versatile enough to do an awful lot of things. And this hall is completely daylit. Okay, so the little pitch roofs that you see on the building all have windows. So there's an awful lot of light coming in, like this, both sides, right? They can be blacked out as well. So if we need those to be dark, that can be dark. If you want light in this room, you can open up these folding doors here and you'll get a lot of light coming in through here as well. So the idea is that it's multifunctional. And these partitions here are acoustic buffers as well. So you could have 2 functions going on at the same time. Now I'm not suggesting, yeah.
Is there any facility for staging?
Yeah.
Temporary?
Yeah. So just coming to that. So basically, the acoustic buffer here, so now most functions that go on are probably going to work. If you've got a disco going on here and you're trying to have a cinema here, no, that's not going to work. So at that point, what you start doing is you start getting in a management system going in to make sure that you're not programming the things that are not conducive to the way the building works. So with this being sort of 80 seats, is it possible to say have occasionally a 200-seat performance? And the idea would be yes. So you could turn this around. So either you can use this as rake seating and we can move this forward a bit, and then we get sight lines that go like that, and then the stage can go here. Okay? Now, or you could reverse it. You could go this way, but the front entrance is this side, so there's some things to think about how that best works. We'll just talk about earlier. Given the back here is servicing, and each of these, this is a slightly outdated plan, but each of these has its own door, so we can get access in. But we just thought of an idea. If that was a situation, we could basically have similar screens here, along here, so that they could open up these partitions. This could then be the stage, okay? And that we can access stage sets, all sorts of things, sound equipment, things like that from the back. And you get a back of house, and you can get a couple of green rooms and things to go with that. So there's all sorts of things that could be done to configure that, to balance how these things work. So those are the main halls. Now, then we get toilets for that number of people. That's how many toilets you need. Plus we need storage, plus we need plant rooms and stuff like that. So that's the main building there to function. Now, in order to make that work, you have to have your fire escapes. and you have to have your access corridors for that many people. You have to be able to hold people before they go in, because people don't just sort of know where to go instantly. They're always sort of milling around going, oh, I'm a bit lost. And when you get everyone backing up like that, it's an issue. So you need net area to be able to do that. But what we don't want to do is have that net area only used for that. It just doesn't make sense. It should be multiple use. So we can then have spill out space here where we have the cafe, okay? And the cafe there is where the heart of the building is. It's the life of the building. But also, when you have a particular performance, you can clear away stuff and you can make more space available for circulation. The walls of those spaces really should be things for exhibitions and things like that. So ideally, exhibitions should be where people are going to be. And the more chance people get exposed to the paintings or the art or the photography or whatever, the better. So we're making more use of those sorts of things as well. But you can see that the corridors, technically, and the amount of space we need to escape from the halls, if we had 200 people, that's what we need. So we've got to make the area bigger. And then around the side, you get these secondary office spaces, and these office spaces here, which are configurable to be either part of the hall, so this is where the management hall, so it's private, or it could be open to the public. And the balance of where that is and how much or how much isn't used for the public is a balance of operating costs and the financial model to make the building actually be able to be run. And that's a question to be navigated later. So did I answer your question on stage set? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now, in terms of access, you can see that we have fire accesses here, 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 and here, and also here. So that's where they need to be. So it makes sense to make a fire access also an access point as well, since you've doubled it up. And so depending on where you are, so this is the playground, this is the cafe, so it makes sense to be able to use this just as a door. And likewise on this side, if you're coming from the car park and you're coming up the ramp and you're in a wheelchair or you're a pushchair or something like that, it makes sense to be able to come through there. So there are multiple points as well as through the back here for more private use of those spaces. So that's the connectivity. Don't need to go on that anymore. In regards to the back and the car parking there, I know, so the slope of that is shallower than that because we moved the building up a little bit, but that's something that needs to be worked through. But at the moment, you've got three or four disabled spaces right at the back there, so you can actually get to the threshold of the building. And that's something to be worked out because, you know, we don't really want to get a car to come up the front of the building because you're just going to get cars in front of that and it's going to block everything else. And you can see that that path that goes from each of those nodes is just a gentle ramp. Okay. And then, I'm not going to go into this, but you can look at the diagrams there and you can see that what we're trying to do is we're trying to analyze and anticipate different types of programs, different types of use, and work out how would the building be configured to do that. And what's really important, particularly with the future proofing, you know, 50, 100 years time, is to make it just adaptable and as flexible as possible for things that we can't even think about at the moment. Who knows what, you know, people are going to be doing in 50 years time. But this shows how there are multiple uses for each type of space, particularly with the circulation space, so that we can get value from that. So that's a section there, just to show you that you can see the hall is higher, the big hall, and you can see where the light's coming through. Right, so we've got to be careful that we want lots of light, which is nice. This is nice here because you've got an overhang. But what you don't want to do nowadays, you can all feel that the temperature's rising. Yeah, our houses are getting hotter. And when we do lots of glass like that, you know, we're in danger of overheating. And that can be a real big issue. And what we want to stop doing is thinking about putting air conditioning in. So we're not putting roof lights as in terms of horizontal because you're going to get more heat penetration. We're trying to do it on the side. And we can have a bit of an overhang like this so we can mitigate that. So in regards to construction, at the moment, obviously these things have to be worked through, much more detail later in terms of value and cost and longevity, operational, all those sorts of things. But for the time being, based on the kind of stuff that we use on our day-to-day projects, obviously wood is really good because wood is sustainable and wood is also carbon positive because you've locked up carbon in the wood. And it's a great material. It's very warm, it's dense, it's good acoustically, all sorts of things like that. So this is a product called LVL or CLT wood, which is like a sheet of plywood that's probably the size of this, half the size of this room, and then you can cut that into any shape you want. So it's quite efficient. and it can come off-site. It comes manufactured off-site, come and bolt it together, because the downtime, as we were talking earlier, you know, if the construction is going to be between 12 and 18 months, you know, that's 12 or 18 months where this building's not being used. So can we shorten that? And sometimes building off-site, manufactured, and just bringing it and putting it together very quickly is the way to do that. So that's an option. And then on the outside, the building needs to be insulated. Okay, so what are the best ways of doing that, and in terms of a low carbon way? And one of the things we use at the moment is limecrete, which is a blend of lime and straw and various other things like that, which provide a really good insulation level, but also quite resilient in terms of structural stability. And that's sprayed on. Yeah.
Are they for sound insulation?
Sound insulation, yeah. Oh, massive. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So that's an opportunity there to do that. There are all sorts of other things like clay plasters. This is a building we've done down the road, and this plaster. So we built the bricks there are just the chalk from the site, compressed. That's it. Okay, no carbon, no putting in an oven to bake it. Okay, just the chalk, and it makes a wonderful, dense, good, heavy material that doesn't cost. It's just dirt. Okay, so then some people may not want to see that. So there's a way of plastering that. So we've rendered that here with, again, clay from Jim Matthews up the road. Just the clay from the ground, come in, refine it, put it on the wall, and then we had a lady, a local craftswoman, she's amazing, and she polishes it with a rock. Okay, that's her craft, she polishes it with a rock, and now you've got something that looks like a piece of stone. It's incredible. So these are materials that we have here locally. We have the craftspeople, and if we can have our buildings celebrate these things, everyone is going to look to it and say, you know, this is the way things should be. And just the last thing, I'm not suggesting we do that here, but it has influenced the way we do the walls. So some of our buildings, we're also saying, what are we doing with the waste? So we've gone to Jim Matthews, the brickmaker, and we say, what do you do with your waste bricks? Because he's got lots of waste bricks. And usually what they've got to do is, if they can't sell them, they're going to crush them for roads. So you're downcycling. You put a lot of carbon energy into something, and then gradually you're going to crush it and put it on the road. Not a great idea. So we said, what about, can we have your bricks? And at a cheap cost as well, because you're going to make roads from them. And can we actually, with a craftsperson who normally does flint walls, give them the challenge of saying, here's all the bricks that's waste. It's just a muddle of all sorts of things. What can you do with that? And so we build our houses with that. So there's a house up in Wigington being built at the moment, and it's that. It's a wall like that. And of course, you're celebrating the person's craft. You're making something unique for the area. You're using a waste stream. And then are there ways of building plants, flora and fauna, safely into the envelope, in a way that's not going to eat the building, so it's managed rather than any other building where you see falling down because the plants have taken over. So it's a managed way of doing things. And then thirdly, so that's what we'd like to do with the facade, given that it's in a park, is to make it a living facade. It's doing all sorts of things. It's part of the park. It's a vertical part of the park. But actually, could it also be inhabited by the humans that are using the park? And it'd be nice to have the park benches robustly, if you look at those drawings, they're robustly built in so that they're safe and they're not going to get destroyed. A little bit of shelter, and that means, you know, parents can watch their kids playing around and stuff like that and feeling they're sitting in a park bench, to enjoy the rest of the park. And that's really what it may look like. So the external walls are gabions. So gabions are wired baskets that you can put things in. You can put all sorts of things in, bricks, whatever. It's a very cheap way of building a wall. A lot of gardens have them nowadays. It's quite good. What we couldn't do, given that we want to choose, we're not going to go for Matthews handmade bricks. It would be great too, because it's a celebration of what we got locally, but it's very expensive. Okay, plus we've got the carbon. But the other thing he does have, and lots of other people have on the farms here, is flint. Now what we can't do is we can't build a flint wall, because flint walls are extremely expensive and they take a lot of maintenance because it's lime. So every 50 years you kind of got to redo it or it falls apart. But what we can do is we can take the flint and we can put them in the wire baskets, and that makes the wall. Okay, and if you look at some of the garden designs on TV and stuff like that, you'll see that kind of thing. I mean, they really work quite well. And then we can inhabit it with things. Okay, so you could have bird boxes, you could have little places for plants, all sorts of things. So there's a bit of life in the thing. You could even have things where the community comes and brings a piece, a memory piece in steel or metal or something that's, I don't know, a spade or a tool or something, and you could build these things into the wall so that the wall has a memory of the community as part of an art piece. There's lots and lots of things we can do. But the point is, for some who may be concerned, that is not the envelope of the building. That's just what it looks like. The actual waterproof, robust, airtight, watertight membrane is behind that. But it doesn't look pretty because it's just cheap. And then we put these things on the front and then no one can see them. So you see the back. And also, you know, I know there's concerns about graffiti and stuff like that, but quite frankly, if I'm a graffiti artist, I want something nice, plain and simple to get my message across. The last thing I want to do is put it on a bunch of rocks. It's just not going to work for me. So I think, you know, if we did a brick wall like that, you're going to get that. Yeah. But if we do it this way, I would be surprised if anyone did anything. And if people did do anything, it's very easy just to take, you can take some of the rocks out and just put some more rocks in it. It's quite straightforward. And that's an example of the kinds of things that you can get. So there are people doing lots of buildings like this. So you've got a nice piece of copper going around the edge just to make it finessed. So the money that we're spending on the nice bits of the building are just the small bits of like the seat, the copper seat, the entrances, the top, the coping of the thing in a nice copper material. So it looks nice and sophisticated, and that's what your eye picks up. And you don't really pick up the gabion walls. So, but what you don't want to do is build the whole wall out of some really nice stuff like handmade bricks. And then depending on how you light it, and you can even see in the top one there, if you did open some of it up, we could get light. So if you put a window behind it, so it's still enclosed in the building, you get the light coming through from the rocks and stuff like that. So it's quite beautiful. And then copper is a good material. Most of the copper on the building industry that we use is actually recycled, 100% recycled. So it's making use of what we already have, and it lasts an awful long time. And there are many different colors we can do in copper. So there's variety and then lastly, just on the roof, you know, we're putting a piece of concrete, which is the floor, onto a piece of nice land. And what we're trying to do is to say, well, does that mean, you know, we have to take away flora and fauna? No, we don't. We'll lift up the park and we'll just put it on the roof. And we'll put a green roof on there so that we increase the flora and fauna of the site as part of the park. So some people are concerned about drainage and things like that. These systems are designed to do that. They're not 100% flat. Okay, they have very small falls in them, so that it's designed to drain. But the whole point, being a living roof, is you don't want to lose the water. You want to keep the water. So the roofing system is designed to store water in what looks like little egg crates. And then if once every 50 years you get a deluge that you can't cope with that, it's gone over that, then it will have to drain to the sewers. But what we're trying to do in the urban environment is to actually reduce the amount of drainage, surface water drainage into that system, because they're all getting overloaded and we're getting a lot of flooding. So just a couple of quick images here, just showing you the context. Basically, this is just the same as that little model there, how it sits within something, and the little glimpses we get. That route is from the higher level walkway along there, along the car park. That one is from over there as you come round. We're going to take some of these leyland eyes down a little bit, I think, because we need to open up the site a bit more and get more light in. And just a final image. You've seen that. Where is the image? Yeah. So that's the image there. And we'll zoom in close up a little bit. So you can see that the open parts of the building want to be related to where there's connection with the park. So obviously we've got the children's park there. Parents can sit, have a coffee, look at their kids. Everything's quite safe. I have been advised, though, that playgrounds officially must have a fence around them to keep the dogs out and things. So, you know, we'll have to work with that. And that's the entrance side there. So you can see the ramp coming down from just that point there. Just gently come up to the front of the door. As I say, that position where those people are walking up the stairs is this way. And I don't see that many people using it, but it is part of the entrance sort of arrival. And that is it. So happy to take questions. Yeah. Thank you.